Okay, so the recording's started. Welcome to Make the Cut and Popup Card Studio question and answer webinar. Tonight is April 15th, 2014. Thank you for joining us. Also thank you to Julie and Susan who are helping in the background tonight, as well as Susan will be handling the first question. I've already gone through the ground rules, so we'll get started. Each week I post in the forum a thread so that people can ask their questions for the upcoming webinar ahead of time. And we'll start with those questions. So the first question is from Kathy, who was CC'd by me on the forum, and this is the one Susan's going to demonstrate. So Susan, if you're ready, I'll switch over to you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, I'll let you know when we see your screen. Okay, we see it. Okay. I'm going to go on mute.
This is the style of thing that Kathy would like. I had a look at this. I had a look at the YouTube videos on the Grotto, I think it's pronounced Grotto, cards. So this is what I come up with. I'm just going to do sort of a rough way of how you go about getting it to look like this. And yes, you can do this in Popup Card Studio. So first off, I want to take over what Kathy started with, which is these. So I'll take these, copy over to Make the Cut on a 5x5 card. You'll have to work out, when I did a 5x5, it sort of like was very little when I made it, but you can work all that out in time. But this is just the rough way of how to do it. So we'll start on a back plane of 0 and we'll go paste in place. First off, what we have to do is trim the bottom of this because I know that it's not straight. So I just cropped the bottom of it, and I'll just do a crop just to make sure this is. Now you can do any shapes for these pop-ups, but we'll just start with what Kathy has requested. So now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees and I'm going to do it a width of 5 inches. Enter. I had the lock I had the lock on, and I'm going to put that in the center and down the bottom. Now the thing with this here, all the folds are coming from near the first opening of the card, and it's built backwards. So I'll be building it as if you're looking at it from behind this card. And this is built in 2 pieces. This is one side and this is the other side, which is just reversed after you do this side. So first off, because we want them all coming from right, we all want them all folding from here. Now I find it very difficult to work in portrait mode on the card, so sorry about that. Now we'll get started. First off, what did I do? I've got to think what I did first. Hang on. Okay. It's not letting me show that. Okay, so first off, what I need to do is I need to grab these and I need to stretch it so it's the first 3, not the backing. The backing circle is fine, but I need to stretch these 3 so they're about the same size as the back one, because we're going to use the fold back method. And then what we're going to do is grab those three, cut them, and then we're going to put this on an inch snapping, and we're going to come forward an inch, go paste, then we're going to grab the next two, cut them, come forward an inch by just clicking the, because this is on a snapping of an inch, if I click this it comes out an inch, then I go paste, and then I just select the last one. I cut that one and come out an inch, and I paste that. Okay, so this is what you'll be viewing from the front of your actual card, but in this case from the back of the card. So we'll hit the panic button. Now we go back, hold the D key down, go back to this one, and we want a straight edge on this one. So we can just make that a bit bigger. Oh, and take the snapping off. Right, so I want to crop. So I've got a straight edge on here. And then I go with that selected, make sure it's on the bottom of the plane, and I go fold back. It wants to fold back to the back, I go accept. Then I come to the next one, forward, which is this one here. So the same again, what I need to do is have a straight section here for this to join to the back. So I make a straight edge on that piece. With that selected, I go fold back, and I want it to fold back to that 1 inch mark. I go accept. Then I come forward to this one, and I crop this one so it's got a straight edge. Now this one I'm doing is not exactly like the other one. It just gives you an idea of how to work it out, because all the videos that I did see all varied in different shapes that they had in here. So with that one selected, we go fold back, and it's too high. So we go cancel that. So we want to make this smaller than an inch above that. Oh, when I cropped that I didn't crop it properly. Okay, go undo that. We'll bring this to the top so I can see what I'm doing. Bring to the top. Okay, so now when I crop this, I make sure I crop it all. That works better. Now I see if I can do the fold back on this, and it should work. And we go accept. And now I do a print preview. Print preview. And you have your score lines, your mountain and your valley folds all up. And of course this bit gets cut away. And this bit down here, from this score line here to the back, gets glued to the opposite one. So from that, you go save as, export as SVG, and I got Kathy. And we save that. Then you go over to make the cut and start a new project, and we go import that SVG, and first what you do is you node edit and take away this one here, this one here. I just click on them. When they highlight green, I push the delete key, So what you have is your first piece. Let's rotate it so this gets all the valley folds become mountain folds and all the mountain folds become valley folds. So it concertinas back in. So then what you end up with is this going back and back and back and forward. So, and you cut two of these and you join this section here. Now, when you want to, we'll lay this up here. Is there any questions so far before I go to adding your colouring?
I do not see any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to do a copy of this because if you see my example here, you see how this all should have been blue inside, but I ended up with white in there because I did a big mistake, but I end up using it like a beach scene, so that was okay. So what you do, if you want this, you've got to take this piece here, just the pieces up to these lines to get, if you want the pattern to be secure. I used the full bit to get it and it didn't work. So what I mean is I will, let's see, what I'll do is I'll put this on its own layer, close this one for the moment, and I will change the line style by clicking on here and going down to line style, and I want no dashes. Okay, I'll zoom in here. So this, turning it into no dashes, you can see what we want. We want this solid piece here, this piece here, and this piece here. So how did I work this out? Sorry. We can do node editing here. I don't want that. I don't want that. And I don't want that. There's two lines there. Okay. So first off is I don't want this score line here. Someone's got their mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we grab this line here and we join that to the closest node. So that joins to there. Drag this line here and join this to the closest node. I've forgotten how I did this, sorry. Join this one to the closest node up here. And here. Now we we've got to break this node here. If somebody's got another idea for this, but this is the only way I worked it out. I broke all the nodes along this bottom section. Because what I want is this full section. Oh, I had this right. Okay, so what I want is this section here, up to this line here. Okay. I did this twice this morning and I worked out everything I was going to say. Put that back on there. That works better. Okay, so first off, I want to break. I want to cut here. And I want to cut here. Okay. So now with this section, no. This section, okay. So that's your first bit that you'd see from the front. Perfectly fine. Okay, now what we need, that one's done. Now we need to cut this line here, right on there, and cut this one right on there. So we'll get rid of what we don't need, but we want this. No. Right, take this over to there. Grab that one that we just cut. Okay, we take this line straight down. And the reason I have to do this is because you can't just, at the moment, you can't just grab the colours out and because you want one shape like that for the actual colour scheme, and then the other one is shaped like this one here. So we break this one apart and see what happens now. Break apart. We want this line here, this line, holding the shift key down, yeah. And we join them, and we'll carefully bring these back over here. And we want this line here. And we want that what we just joined. And those two get joined up. So, oops. So what we've got so far is these three pieces, if they were solid, are the ones that have your actual picture that you want to see from the very front. So pretending these were made solid, you have to join these up with lines. Like that, and up to that one. And take this down here and up there. Right, now what you do is you grab this one, do a copy of it, grab this one, and you do a boolean join, which is that one, apply, and we paste the other one back in place, and now we've got this one. And if you do a copy of this one, hold the shift key down, select that one, do a boolean join, do apply, and do a paste. Yes. Okay, I feel better now. Okay, so this is your actual picture as you're looking forward from the front of your picture here. So if this one doesn't matter because it's all mottled, but a lot of her ones, the pictures actually joined as you looked onto them, face on, that this had like a Christmas scene inside a shop, and these all have to match up. So for this, you would have to line all these up on your card, on your picture, have your picture perfectly there. So this one would be cut from one picture at that very join. Then this one would be the same, cut at that very join. And then this one would be cut the same at that very join. So it'd have to be 3 photos the same to get the view back. Then what you do is you would then, for your print and cut, you would take your, say this was a picture of a Christmas scene, you would put that back in there for your print and cut. Put that back in here for your print and cut. And of course then you would do your mottled background for in here, because they're that are going to be side on. So to have your picture going forward, you've got to spread your picture out. Does that all make sense, or did I just confuse everybody?
It makes sense to me. No one's asked any questions yet, so I'm hoping the questions are working. Cool. So. And
then when, well, I don't know if anyone's looked at the video, but then this is cut and a complete opposite one's cut in reverse, and then these bits here on this side are glued together to make, did I do a side picture? Not really. And then a square base lid is put in with little slits on the side to go, because this is joined. Oh, that's another thing, sorry. This last one is, close that for a minute. Unlock that. Okay, this line here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, hang on. First off, what I did realize after I made mine is you need an extension down here. Sorry. Half an inch on the actual card. So if I selected this and did a layer, and then just selected the outside, and that one did a weld. Oh, because that's not. Let's see if we can do a fuse and weld on this. It didn't turn solid. Okay, we'll see where it's broken. It's broken up here. Still didn't join. I needed another half an inch under here, so the base had somewhere to put in here, because this had to have a half an inch lower here. I've gotten out of being used to doing things live here. Okay, let's do this. Let's delete this. Let's delete that. And delete that. Now, right, select this, do join to closest node and join to closest node. And there we have it. So if we now select these, I probably should have taken the and so you have your score marks here and your cut lines. So probably before I added the 1/2 inch under here, I should have put all the score lines on their own layer. But I hope this gives an idea of how it's done. I'll put that on its own layer temporarily and put it down there. Then I can probably, yes. Of course, you'd sort out if you want to have the score lines mountain and valley on different layers, you can do that before you add the 1/2 inch. And we'll lay that on there. And that's all the score lines. So I can now select these, cut them from that layer and put them back over this layer, paste in place, select all them and join them back together. Sorry if I confuse people then. No, and we want them cut lines. Okay, so that's it. And then this one becomes your cut pieces for your top layer. This one here. So are there any questions?
Yeah, well, so first of all, Teresa said, great job. Nan had asked, you had mentioned a video, and she asked, which video did you mean? And I think you were talking about the YouTube
Okay,
video.
if you go to YouTube, I don't know, if you go to YouTube and type in Grotto cards, as Grotto cards, Diane, somebody who made these cards onto a CD, and she released a whole pile of cards. She's got a whole lot of videos of how they make them up, how they cut them and fold them and cut them by hand and print and cut from the CD.
Okay.
So I didn't actually get that out because Are there any others?
Kathy says, thank you so much, Susan. She would not have figured it out in a million years, although she'll need to watch this a few times.
Well, the funny thing is I thought I'd found all the different pop-ups, and this one just blew my mind because I've never seen this sort of thing done before. So
it was good. And Kathy, thank you also for posting that as early as you did, because that gave Susan some time to work on that.
Oh yeah, I've got 7 here that were wrong. So once I sort of figured it out, and then when I got to making this one up, I discovered that I did the background wrong, but then I was never going to decorate it, and then I thought, oh, well, now it looks like waves under the sea, so that will do. So you can do anything, because you can do print and cut, but you can also just decorate it with cut things like my one here.
Okay. You said you did Grotto card for the YouTube search?
Yeah, grotto card for the YouTubes, and there's heaps. She's done, you know, a big CD of print and cut ones.
Was that,
you know, print and cut by hand.
and her name, was that Michelle?
No, her name's Diane. I think it's Diane or Debbie.
Debbie, there is a Debbie. Debbie Moore's. How to make grotto cards. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Debbie Moore, Kathy's just said so.
yeah.
Yeah, Debbie Moore. I knew it started with a D, but I didn't think to write all that down. I had to write down everything I had to remember, and now I forgot, so.
Okay. I think. Okay, so is the design in half so if you. Oh, so Barbara's asking, is the design in half so that you can use a white. Or, well, you can read it. It says, is the design in half? If so, can you use a white card?
Well, it's got to be designed in halves because the back section, this back section here, is what glues to the other piece. And it does fold flat. I do have folded flat. The base pops out and then it folds back flat. So if you notice that this white bit here, behind here, is what's glued to each other. And you can make these as big as you like. So, but you can't really, I don't think you can design it as one. But it's still really, you can design the same sort of thing in a 180 degrees, just having exact same thing on the back and front, and this would be on the fold line. But you'd still have to glue in these two pieces together, this to the other piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry. Seeing if there's a. So Louisa said. So Louisa, who did some, she's the posted late tonight. She was working on it as well. She actually posted something to the gallery, and you can do it with one piece. So there's probably different methods, but so check out. You can check out Louisa's post in the gallery. You can check out Debbie Moore's videos, which will follow more with probably what Susan did here in Make the Cut and Popup Card Studio. So
yeah.
Let's see if there's any other questions for Susan while we have her. Kathy says, "Beautiful job. Thank you again." Barbara says, "Yeah, thanks. We'll have to do it watching the video."
What did Louise call it in the gallery?
It is called Grotto Card Overlays for PNC. If you do a reversed, yeah. Oh, she added more than one.
Okay.
When I looked, there was just the one. So.
Oh, download. Hang on.
There's version 1 and version 2. It looks like.
Easy to see. I don't use this very well. So, oh, okay. Oh, okay. So it's the same principle, only it's smaller. Yep. So yes. And did Louise design this in Popup Card Studio?
I'm guessing not.
No, in Make the Cut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so for the adventurous of you out there, this will be a homework assignment. It's due. It doesn't have to be a complicated card, but just try to do a grotto card, just to see if you can get the hang of it.
And it's well worth watching the videos of how she made it up. And that gives you a more of an idea of, you know, what you've got to actually do to put together. But
okay, so thank you very much, Susan.
no worries.
Let me switch over to me. Okay, so you should be getting back to my screen.
Now.
Yep. So that was that was these two questions, and then Louise, Loopy Lou here, added it to the gallery. So, you know, you can look for that in there. And Kathy was the one that asked the question, so we're good there. Okay, so and then this was the Debbie Moore. I just did a search on YouTube, Greta card, Debbie Moore. And you can see she has quite a few of different cards, but the grotto cards, she's got quite a few videos on. Okay, so the next question is going to be, okay, so this was from Dee, and she had a bunch of stars that she brought in, she pixel traced in. And let me get her project file here. And I got too many things open here, but hang on. I should just probably just I'll just download it again. Okay. So here's the project, and I'm going to go over this, and then Susan, I'm sorry, not Susan, Julie's may have some other ideas as well. But I'm just going to, so the basic question is, she wants to get rid of, so she doesn't want, so this was a trace, so there's double lines, and she doesn't want double lines. And is there an easy way to do this? So I'm going to go over a couple things. One, I'm just going to zoom in here real quick, is right away, the first thing I would try to do is just do a break or layer or something. And when you do that, you'll see that some things come out and some things don't. So that means there's got to be an opening somewhere in this path, somewhere in this path. And so what I'm going to do is undo this. And I can see there's a gap there. Let me just, I'm actually zooming a little bit more, and we'll start over on the left here. So you can see there's a gap here, so that's not completing it there. So the easiest way to, you could do node editing, but right now probably the easiest way is to do a default, an invert eraser, which will add to you know, the shapes. And this is the smallest file, smallest size you can get. So you can see it's just about the right size. If you try to go smaller than that, you'll see that you get the default of, I think it's a millimeter. So the smallest you can go is 0.0254. And when you do the eraser, if you hold your control key down and then left click, you get straight lines. If you don't hold the control key down, you know, you get squiggle lines. So for me, sometimes it's easier than trying to match right in here. I'll just go right from the corner, hold the control key down, and just go to the end here. And then you get, you know, pretty good solid line. And we'll look to see if there's any other, okay, here's a section that's open. And I guess I should do this in order here. Okay, and there's two over here. And this one over here. Oops. Let me undo that. Try to get a little bit centered, a little bit better. And I think that's all of them. So we can do a test. Oops. Get back to node editing mode here and zoom in. Okay, so now if we do a break or a layer, oops, I got to select it first. Then everything turns. So chances are you're going to have pretty good, you have everything there. So back to the original question of how, you know, you can node edit to get rid of lines. That can be tedious. There are a lot of individual line segments you can see. So if you really, if for whatever reason in your project you want to do the node editing to remove specific parts of lines, what I would suggest is before you start doing it is select the object or shape and then go to auto simplify. So we got rid of 80%, almost 80% of the nodes, which means our line segments now should be a little bit larger. I mean, there'll still be a lot of them, but you can see that they're not quite as small as some of the original ones were. For something like this, though, you can sort of decide what you want to keep here. So I'm saying that because you can see that this is sort of interlocking stars. And so it depends on what you want your end result to be. So what I would suggest is, and you can do this with a break or a layer. I'm just going to do a layer first to just show you how a layer is going to split it up. So if I have a layer, it breaks it up into two pieces, basically the inside shapes and this was the complete outer line. Okay? And so what I'm going to do here, so I just did a Control-Z to undo. I'm going to do each its own, and we'll change the color so we know what's what here. Okay, so let me go to just fill so we can see. So it's kind of hard to see here because of the, it's thin in some areas, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer, which is all the inside pieces, and I'm going to do a break. Let me show you first off to the side here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to do a break. The thing with the break is I basically want to take all these pieces, all these inside pieces, and save them for here for one version, and I want to get rid of them for the other version. So I'm going to leave them on here so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm selecting just the inner layers here. I'm going to do a break, Control-B for break, and then I'm going to take I'm going to select just basically the outer parts of the stars. So I'm holding the Shift key down as I do a left click to select them. I'm going to move them on their own layer. So let's get rid of these two. So this is what I end up with. And I'm going to join them back. So with those selected, I'm going to do a Control-J, which is a join. So that's sort of one result. The other result I don't think is as nice because you sort of lose a lot of the definitions, but it in essence would be the outer shapes of everything, right? So if I do a join here, you can see that. So here's basically just the outer lines joined together, but you sort of lose that definition. Even if I put on the fill and outline, you sort of lose that interlocking look. You get just a solid look, and I don't know if that's what you're going for or not. You don't see what you're doing with this. You're going to do vinyl, or you're going to do paper piecing, or whatever. But I imagine it's going to be something, you might want to do something like this, where it looks, when you're done, whether it's vinyl or paper piecing, it looks like the stars are interlocking. Excuse me. As opposed to this. I will say, I didn't keep a copy of the original. So hang on a minute. Let me open up another. There we go. Oops. I guess I have to save that as something else. Okay. I will say that one of the things, since you're tracing this, one of your questions was, is there something you could do better in tracing, right? So to answer the first question, the simplest way to do this is doing either a break or a layer or whatever to get rid of the pieces you don't want. And I'll show that again real quick on the other one. We talked about the editing tool. There's a lot of small line segments, and we showed how to get rid of that, but I would still not recommend that particular way. And so you wanted to know if the solution should be in the editing or adjusting the settings during import. I would say definitely you could adjust the settings, and I don't know what the original picture was, but so that you don't get the break here. I think there was a break in here somewhere, this break and this break in here. You could adjust that by upping the threshold, or I don't know which method you use for the tracing. But that would help in that you won't have to go in there and edit the pieces to get to the point where you could do a break or whatever. Excuse me. So let me go back here again, back to the original one after we modified it. Okay. So now this is everything there. So another quick way, if you're not trying to get the two different versions like I did, you can just do a break. So Control B for the break, and then just choose to get rid of the stuff that you don't want. So we probably don't want the outer lines here. Oops. So you can delete the outer lines, the inner ones. And sometimes it's easier to do this in a non-contrast, so you can sort of see where things, the different pieces are. When it's in contrast and the default color is black, sometimes it's harder to see where some of these little pieces are here. You could change the color here, I guess, as well and see it a little bit better. But then all I'm doing is clicking on this and deleting and deleting. I missed a piece here. So if this was the look that you wanted to get, then probably the quickest way would be adjust your tracing so that it comes in as a good solid trace. Do a break and remove the pieces that you don't want to keep. And again, the pieces we didn't want to keep was the I'm going to change the color now while we're talking about it here. The pieces you didn't want to keep is the very outer shape. So we're going to do the break again. And we want to get rid of the outer one. You can see how the outer outline gets selected there. And then just select it and delete it. And then delete the inner pieces that you don't want to keep. And there you have a pretty good, oops, I like Control Z. So that's a way you can do it. These are sort of, if you wanted sort of the hand-drawn, not symmetrical, not even, how the sides are not even here. If you like that look, then, go with that way. If you're living with the look because you want the interlocking stars, you can also create your own stars and do it. So there's one in the shapes. So you can do a quick, I should have brought it in a little bit bigger to start with. So get it about the right size at least. Now we enlarged this quite a bit because of the, here, let me do this. Oops. Went to the wrong project here. Let me go back to your original. Okay. Now let's bring the star in. I'm going to change mine. We'll just bring it in. And we'll enlarge it and try to get at least roughly the same size as you have here. Rotate it. And you can see how far, when you pull up a symmetric star, you can see how far off it is. You sort of have to guess at what you want to, how close you want the new star to be to the original stars. And all these stars are not exactly the same anyway. Something like that. Then do a shadow, Control H. So let's do, I don't know, minus point. Let's try 175. No, it's roughly correct. Accept and do a join. So there's sort of the base of our star. And then it's just a matter of duplicating and moving them. So I'm doing, once they're selected, I do Control Shift and then left click and it duplicates it. And one more comes down this way, it looks like. And then if you want to have the interlocking look, then you have to go through and do a bunch of other editing. But so far, is there any questions on that?
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay. So, maybe if we have time later on, I'll come in and show you how to make these interlocking like this. It's basically some editing. I actually do Boolean join, would probably be the easiest. well, I'll give you an idea. I'll just do two of them, I guess. So if you look at these, so this star, you know, so the second star in overlaps the top here, but goes underneath, or appears to go underneath here. So I'm going to take this star, duplicate it, because I need it for Boolean joins. So what's selected is my copy, and I'm going to select this star, oops, this star, and I'm going to do a Boolean join, and I want to do, in this case, the A minus B. And now I have it underneath one of them, but this is wrong. So then you would do a quick node edit and delete those lines, and then join those lines so they go over top. Okay? But we want to then now cut out, you know, the star underneath it at that spot, so I can take this, duplicate it, Control-Shift, left-click, and then just left-click to get, so I have those two selected. Do the same thing, Boolean join, shortcut is Control-U. In this case, I want B minus A, and apply. And now you see that this piece is cut out here so that it looks like it goes under, you know, underneath this star, and this star is cut out here so it looks like it goes underneath the first star. And then you would basically do the similar things all the way across. So that's how you can make your own shapes to look sort of overlapping. And of course you can fool around with the spacing, the, you know, how shadowy it is. You know, this is a lot different look than, you know, what we ended up with. Oh, I guess I removed it. But what we ended up with, because these are sort of, you know, I don't know the right term. They're not, you know, they're not evenly spaced or symmetrical stars. They're, you know, the shadow isn't even all the way around. So it depends what look you're going for. But hopefully that'll help. Again, the main thing is anytime you do a trace, you're going to get usually what we call the double lines, and the easy way to get rid of that, you know, is basically do a break and then delete the pieces you don't want. And again, I would probably do that in a non-contrast mat, just so you can see where things are overlapping and that kind of stuff. If you do this in a contrast mat, even, you know, this way, it's kind of hard to see where you're at. You know, it's kind of hard to see if things are set up correctly. You know, whether or not you have the fill-in outline or just the fill-in, it's still kind of hard to see. So, any questions?
Just thanks. That was very helpful.
Okay, good. Okay, so that, Danielle, is that you? Are you D377? Okay, thank you. Sorry I called you D earlier. Okay. Okay, so last week after we stopped the recording, the question came up. There was a relatively new person, and I forget his screen name off the top of my head, but he was asking if in Popup Card Studio if you could do a oblique card. And I don't know. Let's see if, well, if Julie or if somebody can find that thread, then I can get going. I can show that, so show them that picture. But so the main issue was that we had talked. It was after the recording, so what we went through, it sort of got lost. So Skippy wanted me to go ahead and go over it again now that we are on the recording. And the original question was, can you do an oblique perspective card in Popup Card Studio? And the short answer is no, not entirely. And we talked about some ways you could do it. So, and again, once we get the thread up, I think it was Sandy, somebody had, you know, basically done it part in Popup Card Studio and part in Make the Cut. But if we look at this, I just did a simple shape here. You know, a simple, you know, basically 4 rectangles with anchors back at different, you know, measurements just to get a little bit of a different, make it simple, but still, enough variety that we could see what was happening. And of course, when you cut this out, it'll look something like that. And in fact, it will look, let me bring these over here. It looks something like that. This is an actual card that I cut out. So you can see it, sort of straight on like that and sort of from the top. Everything's nice and straight, 90-degree angles, and we go through there. Did you guys, I guess I can just sort of flip back here. Did anybody find the,
I'm still looking.
okay. Well, I'll show you what mine was then. So then I sort of did it more dramatic than you could actually tell from his. But this is basically this shape, and then I'll go through what I did to do this, but it sort of changed the perspective so that not only did the vertical lines, the cut lines, sort of, I made it so that it went out to the right here and out to the left on the left side. And then from the top, you can see, from the right side to the left side, they radiate out. It's kind of hard to tell from here, but these are not, there's no 90-degree angles here, okay, except for when we do the actual fold, that's 90 degrees at either end. So the question is how can you do this? And this is similar to his picture, only his picture was a little bit more complicated. The design was more complicated. And we talked about last week, one of the easy ways to at least get a shift on this is you could go to global operations and then just do a skew, one way or the other. That was probably too much, but you get the ideas. But that only skewed the vertical cut lines, right? If we look at the top, these lines are still parallel to the back part of the card. And it's only and you can only skew it one way or the other. You can't say, well, I want to skew, on the right hand side skew more to the right, and on the left hand side skew more to the left. So we talked about last week that what you could do is I had exported this in, rendered it as an SVG. So the SVG will look something like the print preview here, right? This is a pretty straightforward card. And I brought that SVG into Make the Cut. If I can find, see, is that the one I want? I'll just start a new project here. So I'm going to import that SVG. And you can see that this is pretty much, that card, right? It's a straightforward card. Oh, someone found the thing here, so let me go ahead and bring that up. If I can. Okay, so here was Paperpino was the guy's name. He's got a great website too if you want to go to it. So you can see from this design, see how these sort of radiate out. These folds here are definitely not parallel to the back. It's kind of hard to tell, but some of these are not straight up and down. These look like they're just all skewed sort of the same direction. It's kind of hard to tell from this picture. But the idea is there. You want to be able to, in essence, change the parallel lines to something other than parallel. And so that's what we did. And, oh, thanks, Susan. So one of the ways to do that, so I'm going to copy this or move it over here. Actually, I should have, I'm going to split to each its own. So we have the cut lines and the, oh, we can leave them there. And I mean the fold lines and the cut lines. The cut lines, I'm going to take a copy over here. So I just did, Control Shift and then left click. And I basically want to do a break here and get rid of everything except the outer rectangle. And you'll see why here in a minute. because we're going to take that to, we have to get it back to a straight card. Oh, I should mention one thing. This was designed so as a standard, well, not a standard. I bring it in at 8 inches across, 5 inches down, which means it's an 8 by 10 cardstock. And you can see that here, this is 8 by 10. Okay, so I'm going to, oops, don't need to go down that low. So the deal here is, let me just get this to the right spot. I'm just doing that so I have it right at the center here. So you can see my center, which is where the center fold line is going to be, is going to be right here, and it's 8 inches wide. But I want to change the, I'm going to do a perspective warp. And we showed a little bit of this, I think a couple webinars ago for another project. But basically what I want to do is change, I'm going to create a rectangle. And this should, let me just make sure this is, okay, so it's actually too many segments. So I'm going to just do something real quick here. Oops. This is going to be delete node. So I have 1 line, 2 lines, delete node, 3 lines, 4 lines. Because when you do a perspective warp, you do have to have 4 straight, it has to be a 4-sided shape that's created with straight lines. It can't be it can't look straight. It can't be a Bezier curve that's straight. It's got to be a straight line, just 2 points. Anyway, so sort of thinking here as I'm going to go through this is I'm just going to turn snap on just to make it a little bit easier here. Let's do 1/4 inch snap. I'm going to change this now. I want the right side. So let me try to sort of show you where I'm going with this. I want the left side to sort of be perspective leaning to the left, the right side sort of perspective leaning to the right, and then the top and bottom basically narrowing as you go to the left. Okay, so if we did that part first, which is what we sort of did last week, we did it in 2 steps last week. I'm going to do it 1 step now. Then I would. Oops, these should all be straight lines, convert lines. I must have moved one of them. Convert to line, line. There we go. So if I just wanted the perspective to just go sort of from the top towards the center as I'm moving from left to right on both sides, I can just simply do the perspective and just bring this in, say, that's probably too much. Well, let's do it. We'll be dramatic here. And that's the perspective. And I'll just show you real quick what this would look like. I'm going to keep a copy of this down here just so we have it here. So the way to do perspective warp is you have your selection. So we're going to, oops, I want this select, oops, try that again. I want what I'm going to warp to be selected. Click on this until you get, so those are my resize handles, my rotate handles, and my warping handles. They've got to be on the warping handles. Press and hold the control key and then left click and drag until you see your cursor change to that, looks like a perspective rectangle or a polygon with a square and a circle in it. And depending on how it was made, you can see this is sort of right upside down right away. So first thing I'm going to do is, you can either rotate it, but the first thing I'm going to do is reverse the warp points and just see if that makes things look better, and that does. Okay, so I'm going to accept that. And you can see now right away, if I get rid of I'm just selecting the outer one. Oh, that's my perspective one. So that's my cut lines. I do a break. I get rid of this because I really want to use this, right? So when we look at this, let me go to turn everything white here, or something other than black, and we'll go to contrast, and we'll have fill and outline. So you can, oops, I'm missing some of my cut lines. Why is that? Maybe we'll just change this one to white. Or,
They're underneath your square.
oh, that's why. Thank you. Okay, so we can do that here. Oops. And I want this in the center. And we'll move that to the top layer and then move it down to the bottom. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Susan. So you can see here that I do get, you know, in essence, you know, my centerfold will still be perfectly horizontal, which is what you need for a pop-up card. In this case, all my vertical cut lines are still vertical because we didn't change the perspective on that at all. But you can see that as you, on the top half, as you get further away from the center line, it's more of an angle. So these are more of an angle than this, which is more of an angle than this, which is obviously more of an angle than straight across. So if I just drew a straight line here, you can see, you know, what I'm talking about. So in the center, obviously they're nice and even. As I move it up here, you can see that, you know, it's angled away, you know, angled away, angled even more, and so you can see how far it starts going there. Move that off to the side here. And so you can cut that and fold it, and you will get, you won't get this, but you'll get, from the top point of view, you'll get, you know, these will be straight up and down because we didn't change those, but as you go away from the center of the card, the radiation, the angles will be greater. So you can see this angle here is greater than this angle here, etc. But in our case, we really wanted to warp it both directions. And I think last week when we were doing this let me go back to this for a moment. Last week what I did is then after we did this perspective warp, then we changed it the other way and did the warp again. So we did double perspective warp. And I decided you didn't really need to do that. And I don't know if we talked about that during the webinar, the end of the webinar last week, or I did it afterwards. But so I'm going to go back here to node editing. And so our first warping, you know, we brought the right-hand side down, so the closer it is to the right-hand side, it's going to be shorter, and we left the left-hand side alone. But we also wanted the right side, oops, undo that. We wanted, as it gets closer to the right side from left to right, we wanted the vertical lines to lean to the right. So we're going to change that here. So we're going to, I'm going to undo that and put my snapping back on, just to make a point here. So, you know, I can say, if I grab this correctly, I want it to warp out. You know, as the further it gets to the right, I want the lines to go to the right. And the further it gets to the left, I want the lines to warp to the left. So now I have a weird looking perspective thing, but it should come up with what I want. The one caveat here is the center of our card has to be 8 inches wide. Right? So this is where the center of our card is going to be. So I've got to make sure that this becomes 8 inches, basically 4 inches on either side of the vertical line the way I have it right now. So to do that, I'm just going to simply take my snapping off, and I'm going to eyeball it here. And this is, you know, I may run into problems here, but yeah, so no snapping. And I'm just going to bring this side, so where this line intersects the center line, I want to make sure that's at the 4-inch mark, roughly. And we can zoom in here a little bit to get a little bit better idea here. So from here, and now my center's changed, and we may have to go back and forth here, but basically if I go 4 inches from the center of the mat, because I had everything centered from that side, and then do the same thing on this side, so we want to go to the 4-inch mark there, and I'm a little bit off because it moves things as we go, so that's pretty close. So this is before we actually do the perspective warp, and we're at 8 inches. So let me unzoom here so you can see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches, and our center's pretty close there. And that should give us in theory, should give us the result that we want. So that was an extra thing, I believe. I have copies of everything here. Let me move these 2 perspective things off to their own layer. And I do have 2 cut lines here. Okay, I just want 1. So again, I'm going to select it. I'm going to click on it until it gets to my warping handles. I'm going to hold the control key down, left click on it, and then drag it over to the polygon that I want to warp it to. And I'm going to let go. And again, the first thing I'm going to do is just reverse the warp point order just to see if that works, and it appears to work fine. And now, and I'm going to accept. So now I can get rid of this was the perspective square that I should mention one thing. So again, I'm going to select this, and drag it over, control and drag it over. One of the options, so let me get this to the right one. One of the options is, there's 2 settings, basically, bilinear or perspective. And you want to stay bilinear. That keeps everything evenly, as spaced as you had it. I can show that with characters, and you can understand it. The perspective actually, as things go away from you in your imaginary eyesight here, they squish together. And the easiest thing would be, I'll show you later on what the difference is with words, because I think you'll understand it better then. but in essence, for this type of project, you want to do bilinear. Anyway, so then we want to accept. We can get rid of the perspective, rectangle we did. And then the cut line here, again, we're going to have to break it because we don't want to cut the weird, perspective polygon. We want to cut it with this polygon. So we're going to select that. We're going to do the break, and then basically delete the rectangle, or not the rectangle, the polygon, and then we'll bring this into play here. And this should line up. If we line this one up right at 2 and 1, it should be pretty much in the right place here. And let's zoom in here. And you can see the lines here. Let's turn these yellow. And we'll go to contrast again. And we'll move these to the bottom. Okay. So you can see that my vertical lines now, so in addition to the changes in my horizontal fold lines that we saw earlier, I also get my vertical lines. As they get closer, as they go away from the center, as they get closer to the right-hand side, they lean more and more to the right. So the ones that are closest to the center are almost straight up and down. But then as you go further to either side, you'll see that I get this more of a leaning. So with this result, or if you cut this, you would get a perspective like this. I don't remember what I used for this specifically, but you get the general idea. It leans to the left, leans to the right, towards the right side, and then as it goes away from the center of the card, it angles up. So far, any issues or any questions? I don't
see any questions here.
Okay. So then after the webinar, Andy and I were talking, and we actually found another perspective card, or excuse me, another oblique card. And when we look closely at it, and in fact, okay, let me go back to this so I get the right credit here. Oops, who's this one? Where is it? So Leslie had looked at it, and she said, "Oh, it looks like it's sort of somewhere." She said, basically, it looked like it was radiating out like a circle. Here we go. It's constructed radiating out like a circle, not linear like a Christmas tree, to create the oblique things. So what Andy and I were talking about is what's really easy, would be really easy to do. Sorry, I don't want to do pixel trace. I want to bring in my card again. The oblique card. So this is my straight out card, and we'll make a copy of it over here. We'll keep it over here. And again, real quick, I do want to make, let's do to each its own, and we'll select one of them, and we'll do a break, and then I want to keep this rectangle around somewhere, because that's what we're going to still go back to that. Oops, this one. Okay. Now I can join these back together. Okay. So I'm starting with my regular Popup Card Studio exported SVG file. And if you think about it, when she was talking about it being radiating out, is if you look sort of from the top here, if you sort of imagine that this would be the circle, you're starting the circle out here somewhere, and as you go further out, you get the curve would, obviously the circumference of the circle grows, so the curve is different. But if you took sort of rays from the center of the circle and out, then as you got further away from that, they would spread out this way. I don't believe this one was done with the circular pattern because the vertical edges don't look curved at all. But it got Andy and I thinking, so we said, oh well, if you think of this, and if we turned it on the side, so this is the right hand side of the card, right hand side of the card. So if I wanted to, radiate out of a circle this way, and I took this and just rotated it 90 degrees, and then I said, oh, I'd want to use a conical warp on this. Now, I actually had this set up already, but here's a conical warp where I chose these parameters. So I knew what my slant height is because that's the width of the card, right? That's 8 inches. So that I knew that was there. And then I fooled around with these parameters, and this again may not be the ideal thing, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I always like, when I do a conical warp, I like everything to be warped evenly around the center line. And since I knew this was starting out as a 10-inch, in this now wide card, when it's in the portrait mode or the correct way, it's 10 inches high. But I just fooled around with these parameters until I got around 10 inches in the center, and then with a difference, with the sort of the slant that I wanted, going from top to bottom. There's a lot of parameters in here. I could change this in a couple different ways and still get about 10 inches in the middle, but it might be with a smaller bottom and a larger top, But I sort of like that view of it. Not too radical, but enough that you noticed it, right? And you can look at it in the roll view, but it doesn't really help you in this case because all we're doing is switching it here. And everything fits 100%, and that's why I choose the parameters I did. So if I import that, and now same thing, I can get rid of in my cut lines. Well, let me first take everything that we just warped and get it back in the right direction. Okay, so now we're up and down. And then what I want to do is get it roughly in the center here. I want to take the cut lines. Obviously, I don't want my card to be curved like that either, although it'd be interesting to try to do that. But our idea was we still wanted a straight out card. And so we do the break and then delete this rectangle and then bring in the proper 8 by 10 rectangle. And I want to select everything there and do a join so it's together. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll do the, we'll get yellow and go to contrast. And now you see that I have all my vertical lines, my cut lines, are going to be cut starting from, perpendicular to the center line, curving up and to the right, and then going down and to the right. It's sort of like following a circle. So the center of the circle is out here somewhere. But then you get what you'll end up with is something like this. And so not only are my vertical lines curved, but my horizontal distances radiate out. So you can sort of see here, right? This radiate. This is much wider from here to the center card than from here to the center card. But my folds are all your folds still have to be straight. You can do curved folds, but you wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't work in a card that you want to fold flat. There are specific applications for curved. Think of a French fry box. If you look at the bottom of that, it's a curved score line. But for the pop-up cards, you need straight score lines, and so you end up with something like that. And so all three of these cards I actually cut out. Obviously, these are pictures of the actual card, but you get different effects with the different ways you use to manipulate them. So this is designed straight and this was actually cut from Popup Card Studio. This was then exported, and I brought it in and did the Prospective Warp, showing you and make the cut. And then this one I did brought it in, make the cut, and did a Conical Warp, and then cut it. So those are the different ways to get a different abstract type of pop-up card. Now, the reason I said back here when I did the Conical Warp that I might want to not have the center line be that 10 inches is because while the actual card, if I look at this card, the top of this chimney, for lack of a better word, is below the line, and then when I close this all the way up, it doesn't stick out. Oops, right? It's well within the. Get rid of the things, right? It doesn't stick out of the card. You can probably tell by this one that because the distance from this fold line to this fold line is greater than the distance from this fold line to the top. So in fact, when I take this, where is it here? When I take this card and fold it flat, there's a corner here that sticks out past the edge. So you would either have to be careful in when you designed the card in Popup Card Studio if you knew the left-hand side was going to be, in essence, enlarged because of the way we did the Conical Warp, you'd want to be aware of that when you created it, or you would have to make sure wherever this piece is going to end up that when you do the Conical Warp, I'm trying to get, oops, I went too far. Okay, when you do the Conical Warp, I'd want to make sure that, where since this is my tallest part, I'd probably want to make sure that this part here did not extend 10 inches. past 10 inches. So I'd have to change this a little bit. So this would be a little bit less than 10 inches. So, maybe do 2.2. Oops, I want to go the other. Well, we can make this. Yeah, so like 9 3/4. So by the time you got up here, maybe it won't have, gone so far. Now, in this particular case, I'm losing some of my edges, but the main thing is here is the distance between here and here. You want to be greater than the distance here. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's just gives you some ideas. So let me go back to, there we go. So there you have it. So hopefully those of you that were on last week after we stopped the recording, I think I covered everything we did then, plus then the Conical Warp. And I also merged the two Prospective Warps together. Instead of doing it 2 times, I just did it 1 time, created the rectangle, wrong word, polygon, to be the perspective I wanted in both directions at the same time. So, Julie, are you still with us, or your hand is up?
I'm here, but I want you to unmute me on my other computer
so
I can get my sound going. Nan says, wow, so smart, and Jeanette says, wow, that's amazing, thank you. And Nan wants to know, are you posting?
I'm sorry, I unmuted you while you were talking. Go ahead.
Sorry. Are you posting the oblique cards file?
I can do that. I'll probably do the ones that I actually cut. But just be aware that when you do this one here, it's going to extend past it when you fold it. And the other thing to note, and I think I might have done something in when I did the Prospective Warp. This one here, it looks fine standing up at 90 degrees. Well, first of all, the first two, this one, the original one, obviously, and this one folds flat great, no problem. This one, I must have messed up somewhere, moved things after I did the warp or whatever. While it looks nice here, if you try to fold it completely flat, it's like a 1/16 of an inch off somewhere, because it doesn't want to, it wants to redefine the center fold line by about a 1/16 of an inch, if even that much. So I might have moved something as I was changing rectangles or whatever. So I'll post it, but just be aware that this one, when it cuts, it may not fold completely flat, and I'll have to investigate more with that. Again, I basically created this just to get sort of multiple shapes, with different distances and heights and that kind of stuff, just to get a good idea of how this might work. And it was a simple thing. We'll have to ask Andy or Susan. Andy had done his White House on the radial type of thing, if he wants to show that. And Susan had done a perspective on, Susan, I don't know if you want to show it or you want me to show the card that you did.
The word?
Yeah.
The wording?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, you show it.
Okay, so let me pull that up here. If I can find you here. There you go. What was this one called? P4. See if I can find it here. And maybe I didn't download it. So let me just... Okay, so this was Susan's take on it with this. This was, you did this with the Prospective Warp, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me see which. Here's another one. just a different angle. And then you had one for the top view too, I think.
Yes.
That one. Yeah. So there's the top view, sort of from the right-hand side, and where did my other one go here? Sort of straight on. And then this one's sort of from the left-hand side. So the same idea. So she did a simple project with the word hello folded over with anchors. So just one level deep, but obviously from the top view. Nope, not that one. Sorry, wrong browser. From the top view, you can see that it the closer it gets to the right hand side, it's not as wide as when you get to the left hand side, and then of course from the bottom to the top it goes up. So that was perspective. Let's see. Andy, are you on? Let's see if I can find his card here. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it's okay if I show the White House one that
Yeah.
Susan did?
Yeah. Yep.
So what day was that? Was the after the webinar? Why can't I find it here?
Do you want me to resend it to you?
Yeah, do that real quick. I'll probably find it by the time you...
Okay.
Oh, here we go. I found it. Never mind. So let me bring it over. So this was, so if you remember Andy's White House card that he did a while, and this was, cut and folded quickly. Susan did this for him, but you can sort of see here that it's got the, probably this is the easiest place to see it, where it's got the curve and then the radiating out. Here's sort of the top view here. It's kind of harder to see from here, but as you go from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, it gets further away from the center, or from the back of the card. So, but here, it's just to show you that you can...
Are you making a political statement?
The White House is throwing you a curveball. I don't know. No, this was just a, when Andy and I were talking about it after the last week's webinar, with the Conical Warp, he said, "Oh, we could bring in just about any shape." He goes, "I'll have to try the White House." So he did. Except he had...
Neil says it's spooky.
Spooky? Yeah. Anyway. But you can imagine, it's probably a little bit easier to see on the simple shape one what's some of the effects you can get with it. And I purposely made these longer and stuff so you can see the curves a little bit better. But anyway, so that's perspective or oblique type of changing. Again, the one we did with the Prospective Warp and the one we did with the Conical Warp, and the one was just a straight cut. So hopefully that gives some people some ideas.
Terry has a question.
Sure. Let me get to where I can see
Can
my
any of these simple designs you all are doing in the pop-up program be adapted to use and make the cut, like this hello?
Well, it's basically anything you design in Popup Card Studio, you can export it as an SVG and bring it into and make the cut and do any other manipulation you want there. Go ahead, Susan.
If she doesn't have Popup Card Studio, I've done a fair few of the pop-up card demos in webinars in the past.
Yeah, right. So before we even, in fact, last week when we were talking, when this came up, my original answer was, well, you can't do it in Popup Card Studio because everything's got to be perpendicular and horizontal and, 90 degrees everywhere. But, for the folds, I said, but you could design this the old style way, like we used to design pop-up cards in Make the Cut directly. You just have to do a lot of thinking about where the center fold line is, how far the, basically when you have an anchor, the distance between the fold, out has to be the same distance from the anchor is from the back to the fold. And so you can do this. And Susan's right. There's a lot of webinars where we've talked about doing pop-up cards. In fact, it seemed to come up a lot right before Andy released Popup Card Studio. People had, it's around, well, he released it early or mid-January and early January, and a lot of things came up for Christmas and even, what's the February holiday? Valentine's Day, to do the I love you, I heart you pop-up card. And we showed how to do that and Make the Cut. So you can definitely do it and Make the Cut. It's just that you've got to do a lot of the calculating and measuring and that kind of stuff. It just is a lot easier within Popup Card Studio. If you have Popup Card Studio or someone who designs something in Popup Card Studio, it can be exported to SVG, which of course you can bring into Make the Cut, import directly into Make the Cut.
And hello.
Yep.
And if you're going to do like the hello and stuff, if you don't have Popup Card Studio, you do them flat and then you conical warp them.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it's a lot easier to work out the mathematics in it.
Yeah. So what she's saying is when you're working on wherever it went to here, when you're working on projects. Did I not save any of them? Oh, this one over here. It's a lot easier to design, to design where your centerfold is and where things are when you're only dealing with one dimension. You're going away from the center line or you're going, left to right vertically. But, it's a lot easier to design this than to try to design this first. Design it flat, then curve it, or at least get here and then do the curving. So, okay. Any other questions on that perspective oblique warping of pop-up cards? I would really encourage you to try it. Again, start with something simple, and the conical warp is very simple, straightforward. If I can find it again. Oops. I wanted the pictures. Hang on. But is that the results that you want something more like that or something more like, sort of abstract like this? If you're going to abstract it, do you want it curves or do you want it still angular but just, not 90-degree angles? Anyway, so let's go on to the next. If there's no other questions about that, let's go on to my questions. Where were my
I don't see any other questions.
Oops. Where are my thread? Okay, here we go. Okay. So the next one is there was a conversation on the forum about somebody trying to get the print and cut with Cameo to work, and the only way they could get it to work is that they created the shapes and put them a specific spot so that the registration marks were on a specific spot on the mat. So anyway, they're talking about templates and how can you do templates and that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is here, let's say we're working on a Cameo, and I want to do print and cut. So let me first turn on, oops, I don't want my setup, I want my print options. I'm going to turn on registration marks, and I'm going to use the Cameo registration marks. And normally when you add a shape, then you'll start seeing the registration marks come out. And the problem not the problem. The issue they were having is they wanted these registration marks to be at the same place on the mat and hence then on the paper all the time. And as you as you change your shape or add shapes, your that's interesting. There we go. Your registration marks will adjust accordingly. So the question is how can you do this in such a way that you have the registration marks always at the same place? So I'm going to make up some numbers here just based on real quickly looking at Cameo. If you have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, so when you're doing print and cut with Cameo in Make the Cut, you should have your mat, virtual mat, in landscape mode. You should print it out on paper in landscape mode. So basically the paper, let me go ahead and set that up here. We're going to do landscape, and I'm going to turn the option on so you can see where my paper is. Print options, show paper on that. Okay, it'll give us a blue outline. Here's where my, the paper is, in theory, if I would print this project out. I noticed real quickly, I just did one project in Silhouette Studio, and it seemed like the default settings were these registration marks were, in essence, 5/8 of an inch away from the edges of the paper. Anyway, so I'm going to take this, and so to get a good size, pretty much just sort of a working area, I'm going to say that we can get a 9.75 wide, I think, and I don't remember how far. No, 8.75. We'll see if this works out. 8.75, and the height is 7.25. Okay, and I'm going to put that at I basically want this. Let me do this. Oops. No, not there. Oops. Let me turn stopping on here to 1/8 inch so we get a, that's a 1/2 inch. Okay, so the distance from the corner of this square here basically is 5/8 of an inch from the top, 5/8 inches from the bottom, which means my square is at this position. Anyway, let's just say that that's where you want it. Okay, and I get the full, that's a good working area. If I grow this at all, it's going to change where my registration marks are. They're going to fall off the edge of the mat, or get, move over too far to the mat, if I grow it this way. So, basically, how can you do something like this and keep, basically always have to do this without having to remember measurements and that kind of stuff. So one of the first tricks is anytime you're doing print and cut, if you want your registration marks to not move between the time you print them and cut them, and this will happen with any of the print and cuts, and the situation you get into is if you want to cut something smaller than you're printing, you can't just turn off basically what you send to the cutter has to include the largest shape. Otherwise, your registration marks will move, and we've talked about this in other webinars. It'll move in relationship. Make the cut will think they're in a different place than where they were when you printed them. So the trick around that is, this is my trick. Other people do it different ways. You can leave a full rectangle and always have that open. You can color it white. And so when you print things, if you do a print preview, you don't see anything because it's white. So as long as everything's on top of that, you won't notice it when you print it. The problem with that is when you actually cut, you would leave this layer open to cut, it would actually cut all four sides completely out. And we really don't need that. So what I do is I want to create So this is going to be my design. Oops. And I am going somewhere with this, so just area. Oops. My R area. And this is going to be my locked and visible layer that's going to be locked and it's going to lock it because you're not going to change it, and it's always going to be visible so that you send it to the printer and you send it to the cutter. Let me just change this one to a different color here. Yeah, we'll just leave that there for now. But I don't want to cut out the whole square. And actually, let me just let me add one more layer here and just pretend this is the design. And I'm just, making something. Okay. So, we have the design area, and as long as whatever your design is, it fits in to that area, it's not going to change the registration marks. And when you print it, you can print it, as is, and then just cut it, with this layer open and your shaped layer open. So let me just get back to what I would normally do then with I'm going to close this off, and you're going to see the registration marks move. Don't worry about that. Well, actually, they did move. That's interesting. So what I want to do, my trick, instead of doing a full rectangle, is I actually will only do 2 lines. I'll do a small line in the upper right-hand corner and a small line in the lower left-hand corner. And that accomplishes 2 things. One, it creates basically the extent of that shape of those 2 lines together is the same as this rectangle. But yet when you cut it, it only cut a little line here and a little line here. So it's very quick, and you'll just, won't cut things out. And probably the easiest way to do that is start with the rectangle, the size that you want, go into node editing, and a couple things. You can just, double click there and create 2 line segments and delete the one. We'll do that down here. And then delete the other 2. And then you can make these whatever size you actually, you want it to be. So if we go back to snapping of 1/8 of an inch, that can't be right. Zoom in here, sorry. And let me do a fill outline so I can see it. Okay, there's my little thing. So snapping on. There we go. So that's 1/8 of an inch, basically. Well, not quite 1/8 of an inch. It's going to be, about 1/8 of an inch. And the same thing down here. So basically, you end up with 2 very small lines. Try to do it without curving it here. Okay, this one, the other way you can do it is take it and just say, well, you have to do a break because this isn't right on an 1/8 inch mark. That's the problem. I'm going to do a break or split so that now this is by itself, and then I'm going to say I want this to be 1/8 or whatever size you want it. Okay. So the point is that I'm throwing them back up. That the overall, so let me just actually do something here. I'm going to delete that. So the overall size is the same. So you can see that it's still 8 3/4 by 7 1/4. That was my size here. So my registration marks remain the same, and we're fine now. Now the trick is in creating a quote-unquote template is you can save it to basic shapes. If you save something to basic shapes that only has 1 layer, when you bring it back in from basic shapes, it's going to come in wherever your caret is located on your mat. It'll come in the same size you had it, but it'll come in at wherever your caret is. And I'll show you that real quick. So I only have one thing, 1 layer. I have everything selected. I do a right-click export to basic shapes, and I'll do one test, just so it's up front. And then if I go to another project and say bring in for my basic shapes my one test, you can see that it brought in, it's the right size, but it's not, it's brought it in basically at the 0.5 because that's where my caret was at. So if my caret was over here and I did the same thing, let's double click. It brings it in the correct size, but not where I want it. And the whole point of this is that you want to be able to bring it in the right size and the same place as you originally wanted or originally designed it. So to do that, the trick is when you save something to basic shapes, if you have multiple layers, it will actually ask you a question when you bring it in. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, and I saved this shape. I cheated. I copied it to my clipboard. This is what I'm going to call the design area. And you have to have something in here, when you save it, when you export it. Otherwise, it just ignores the layer. So everything has to be on and visible. And I do a select all, and I can do a export, right-click, export to basic shapes, and then come up with a name. So template Cameo Q&A, because I think I have another one in there, so I want a different name here. So I add it. So now, my caret's over here. I'm going to go to basic shapes, and I'm going to find my templates. So here's the one I just created. I did have one in there before. So template Cameo Q&A, which is one I just created. I'm going to double click on it, and now, because it says, hey, you have more than one layer, you have choice. You can bring it in and placed inside a new page, so we'll get a new page here, and the layers will remain intact, and by the way, it'll remain location-wise as it was designed. Or you can say no, and they'll come in, they'll merge in with the current page, and they'll just come in wherever your caret is. So let's say no first, and you'll see it does the same thing. It brings them both in on the the same page. I still have two layers, but it brings it over not where we want it. And you can see my registration marks are way out of whack because I have something up here and something down here, so they're they're quite the registration marks are on the extent of that. So if we instead still leave the caret over here, let's do the import, and when we select it and answer the question with yes, you'll see that it creates a new page, actually puts me on that page, and I have everything in the right place. So this is still 5/8 of an inch from the edge, 5/8 inch down, 5/8 of an inch up, 5/8 of an inch from the right. So that's a real easy way, and then basically what I would do is I would automatically lock this layer. I would probably lock this layer and just use it as a background so you can design it and eventually, never either turn it off or delete it once you designed it for whatever project you were on. And then I would probably delete the first page. I'd just go on because we didn't have anything on there. So then I have a project with just one page with the extent of the design area, defined by those two little lines. Sorry, let's zoom in here. So you can see I have that little line up here, a little line down here, and they're sort of grayed out because I'm on a contrast matte and I'm locked. So let's go back to contrast, and you can see where things are, and then you can see where it would fall on that page. So then you would just design, start a new thing and design your whatever design you're going to have, as long as you fit it within that this layer. Actually, I should have left let's leave this one intact, just make it a little bit more mute, a little bit paler. So we'd add a new page. Now let's add the text. As long as you have it within there, you can't have any empty layers. Otherwise, it assumes that your registration marks will go on the outside of that. Anyway, as long as you don't have any empty layers and you keep your whatever your design is that you're working on now within the design area, you'll be fine. Those registration marks will print in the same place all the time. And then you can try that. So that's that. And while I have these words up real quick, I told you I was going to do this. So let me just do it quick. I'm going to create a perspective. Yeah. Make it a little bit wider. And let's go back to green here. Okay, so select that. I'm going to make these darker just so we can see them a little bit better. Okay, so Prospective Warp, get the warp handles on there, control key down, left click and drag. We'll get this rotated right. Okay, so this is bilinear. Let me do one thing first. I'm going to make a copy of this so we can see where the words are. And as long as we get them about the same distance here. Okay, I think this will work. Go to warp handles, control, click, reverse. Oops, there we go. So bilinear basically keeps your spacing the same, right? Everything sort of lines up here. If I go to perspective, then the further I get away, see how it sort of is wider here? See how the T takes up almost to the P, the original P and then A, and then they get closer and closer together here because it makes it look like you're looking further away, a perspective of it as opposed to the bilinear warp of it. So that's why when we did the warps, the perspective warps, I call them perspective warps because I was using the perspective. I call it a perspective warp. It's actually an auto 4-point warp, but you want to use bilinear so that you keep the same. If somebody wants to try the perspective one to see how it works, but that would squish things as well as rotate or angle things. So maybe that'd be worth trying, But anyway, I just wanted to show you. I told you I would show you that, and I forgot about it. So, oops.
Brian?
Yeah.
My first 3 tries of folding the other one, they were all out of plumb. They didn't fold nicely. They had that problem that you had, 16 of them.
With the perspective, with the perspective one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there may be a little bit of an issue with that. So the fix there maybe is don't. Well, we'll have to investigate that. But anyway, so any questions on the? I know I'm jumping around here. So the perspective, I just wanted to show you the difference between bilinear and perspective as the 2 options. But back to the sort of the template. Having multi-layered templates, or basically you're saving into your shapes a multi-layered object, and when you do that, it'll come in. You have the choice of bringing it in basically as it was designed, location-wise on the map, as opposed to bringing it in where your caret is. Jeff asked the question of, is there going to be a fix or do we have to live with the workarounds? Right now, for a majority of people with Cameo print and cut, especially now that they've seemed to have updated the driver for the silhouette with the silhouette design, with Silhouette Studio's latest release, 3.x, fewer and fewer people are having problems with print and cut with Cameo. So it should work as you design things. I know I don't have a Cameo, I have a Silhouette SD, and I've never had a problem no matter where I had it. As long as my registration marks were printed, my Silhouette SD picked it up. So it's hard to say that it's a bug in Make the Cut because not everybody's running into it, and fewer people are doing it. So what may happen in future releases is to have the option to put registration marks at a specific spot on a page, whether it's for the Cameo or for the SD or whatever. I think that's been in the wish list for a while, but that would be a feature, a new feature as opposed to a quote-unquote fix. So any other questions on that?
Terry wanted to see how to make that Hello pop-up card using only Make the Cut, and she doesn't have any audio.
Did she come back? Because right now I'm showing that she's left.
No, she's left. But
I sent her to my blog at 2012 and 2013. Hopefully she'll find some of them.
well, she has a problem reading anything. She needs to see a video.
Yeah, but I did send her to those, and she can then follow to the blogs of to the webinars of pop-ups back then.
Yeah, let me just.
She's not on though.
No, I know. So if you go to click clock. System's slowing down here. Well, when that comes up, I'll show you. But if you go to the video page, the Vimeo, the thread that has the videos on it, the second to last posting has a link to the thread that, and I'm drawing a blank on his name again, but the guy that went through all the 2013 videos and did a spreadsheet on keywords. Here we go. So if you go to the Vimeo, the recording thread, and go to this second to last post, and go to that link, that thread, Beach Bum Gus created a spreadsheet for the 2013 webinars, I think all except maybe the last one or two, and did keywords on it. See if I can bring this up. And so we would look for some. What were we trying? Oh, pop-up. Let's try this again. I'm not going to be able to. Wow. Try this again. For some reason it's, oh, here we go. Now let's try it. There we go. So, why is it not highlighting it? I would have thought there would be some in here, but maybe not. Pop up. I guess not. Okay.
I did some in 2011, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and I know we did some. I'm pretty sure we did some in.
I did a fair few in 2013, and I did a few late 2012.
Yeah, I don't see any. Pop-ups. Do we call them something else? I don't know what else we would call them. But anyway, oh, they might have been some that didn't have the, because he only took the descriptions on the videos. So maybe that was, some of them didn't have those write-ups, the timestamps that showed the subjects. Well, we've done a lot of them from the very beginning, so it definitely can be done. So, Joel, I'm not sure I answered your question or answered her question that you asked for her.
Well, she wants a demo. Maybe next week we could have another simple pop-up card studio. Simple Make the Cut demo of a Word pop-up from Make the Cut.
We can show it again if she adds that to the question list. But honestly, I would do a very simple one, but why do it when you have Popup Card Studio? I mean, or maybe what I'll do is, Susan, if you and I can search for the webinars and just point her to her on that.
Yep, sure will.
Okay. Oh yeah. So Jerry says that Susan made a pop-up Christmas card one year and learned how to do it. She learned how to do it from you. Okay. So Lee that's a different question. Okay. So let me. We're running out of time here. So let me go back to my questions here and. Okay, so we did that one, we did that one, we did that one, we did that one. Okay, so TLC 12, I don't see your name here, asked a question about, and I don't know if you're on. If you're on, you can say something. Using, as far as Zing, one of the tools you can get with K&K machines is the punch, and her question was about how to use that punch. And I know you said you looked at the manual, but I would, at this point, let me open up the manual real quick. There's one section in the manual on that, and I think it's extension 10 something, 10, yeah, 1010. So, so this punch tool is basically, as it sets down, it punches through, okay? But there's nothing in Make the Cut to say, basically just push the blade or tool down and bring it back up with no motion, right? That doesn't, in a cutter world, that really doesn't make sense. It only really makes sense in something like this, where you're punching, just want to punch through something. But the way this tool is and the way they suggest using it, so let me just show you real quick why is this? Okay, here we go. So it's a tool with a very fine needle type of punch that'll actually punch through. It's very delicate though, so they have some recommendations here that you put something, you don't have paper and then just the mat. That you have to have some sort of soft material. They suggest either the somewhere in here they tell you either the here we go, non-slip shelf liner, craft foam, or felt, something that will absorb some of the punching through, gives it a softer surface. You would still, set your tool height the same way, or even higher if you needed, to get that extra punch. But in essence, the design you would do is you would do with little circles, and the easiest way to do that is to use the rhinestone function in Make the Cut. So let's just say I had, I don't know, let's see, what do we have? A heart. And I wanted to punch that. Okay, let me do some things here. Print options. Go back to Make the Cut. Turn that off. Okay. Let's say I wanted to sort of punch the outline of that. Their suggestion is to use the rhinestones, picking the smallest diameter hole, and then you can determine, you can do the spacing here. If you want them closer or further apart, you can adjust the spacing here. And so what will actually happen, if we enlarge this, so let's say accept this. Let's just make it really large here. The cutter itself will actually, come down and sort of go around in a circle. But because it doesn't, so it goes down, moves, and then comes back up, right? So if it was a blade, it would go down, go around the circle, lift up, go to the next one, punch down, go around. So with the punch tool, you're still going to sort of have movement, so it will sort of elongate the whole, or not elongate it, but it'll punch down on the edge and then go around to the outside. So you'll end up with a punched thing. It'll sort of do a reaming type of thing effect. And if those things aren't small enough, you can, I think they tell you to do something, make it larger than you want. Yeah, so these holes are too big for your material and that punch, then you can make them even smaller. So there'll be very little movement in Make the Cut, but there is not, you really can't, you could also do the same thing with a very small line, but there's still going to be some movement, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be ever cutting anything in a blade version of it. So, but I would recommend you go through it's a very short part of the chapter. Go through it. If you have any questions, post, sample of what you did, of what the results were. Sandy will help you out on that. I don't have a punch tool, so I can't help you out on that. But she does at least go through it. And the key thing is that you need to have a soft material underneath it. I think they sort of reiterate here again that if you do it straight on the mat, and I can't find it right now, of course, if you do it right on the mat, you might break the punch. The actual thing, the actual tool, because it's a very fine set tool. So
on that, Brian, we did some experiments maybe a year ago with that, and I have a punch tool, and we found that the circles using the rhinestone feature, the circles on a path, actually didn't do as good of a job as a tiny dash line on a path.
okay.
Just the smallest dash line that you can get around a path with pretty close.
Yeah. So let me
then when I used the punch tool with that setting, we had much more accuracy. With the circles, they were lopsided when we used
okay, right.
punch tool.
Yeah. So let me do. Let me just make a line here, and then we'll make it very small. Sorry. So what Julie is saying is you start with a very small line. So we'll try the smallest.
Brian,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
just change the line style to dots. Hello?
Yeah. No. Well, you mean for this guy here? Oh, this here on the heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. That'd be one way of doing it. I don't know how small you can get it here. So let's see. I think you can then go in tenths of an inch here. Oh no, hundredths of an inch. Yeah. So do there. There you go. That'd be better. So if this is small enough, Julie, do you know if the hundredth of an inch was small enough?
Yes, yeah, set it as small as it will go, and set the spacing as small as it will go, and you would get a nice punch out.
Well, if you did the spacing as small as it would go, then you'd have lots of the spacing you would set to however far apart you wanted your holes, right? If you don't want
Yeah, when we're working with a punch with tiny holes, in Pergamano, we want those holes almost on top of each other so that we can, by hand, punch out the rest of them, so it gets a torn look. If you wanted to just punch, you could just use whatever you wanted, whatever spacing you wanted.
Yeah. What I was going to do is if you want something smaller than that, you could do this at the smallest measurement, which is 1/1000th of an inch, and then take that and do the, you'd have to do a lot of repeats here, but you can do the spacing, whatever spacing you wanted, not warping it. And let's just do like 1,000 to start with here, or 100. How many can we do here? Yeah, so that's, you can see you'd have to do a lot of them here. Oops. That was probably too small. It's thinking now. Anyway, so you could get a pretty small line, in the 1,000th of an inch would be, hardly any movement at all. You're seeing all these together, so I'm going to select those. I put them too close together. And then I just want to zoom in here. You can see how small those are. And so basically if we looked at what they would do there, this is going to take a long time too, because I have 1,000 nodes here. but those are pretty small. That's the smallest you can get, probably. So we'll let that think. Actually, can I cancel out of this? Yeah. Anyway, so that's the punch tool, yes.
Can I make a suggestion right now before you go any further? Can you go in and change that 1,000 out of your thing, your warping? Because if you try to put something big in next time, it's going to try it straight away, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. Oops. Come on. Thanks. Okay. Next question. Let me go on to these questions here. I think there's only one more. Okay, so Diane asked about... Oh, okay, so let me just do... Diane, are you still on? I hope you're still on. So Diane is designing a bridal shower invitation. She was given the PNG to work with, not the font, so they designed it sort of before checking in with her. Yes, you're still here. So, and then the ultimate question is how to do that within, to center it within some sort of shape that she's going to cut out. So there's two issues with that. The second part really is really minor, and we'll go through that in just a second. In fact, let me go ahead and bring the PNG file in first. So the file is, and I'm assuming, Diane, that I can show this, right? I mean, you wanted me to do this on the webinar, so I'm hoping it's okay to show this. Yes, okay, good, thanks. Let me get my file here and bring it over. Okay. Let me actually show it to you first. So here's the actual PNG that she was given. It's black and white, very nice that way. The actual size is a little bit bigger than, this is the actual size. But you'll see that it has some really fine, some really fine details, including these, this particular font has the areas, cut out of the font. Some of the swirling up here, is pretty fine, etc. So the trick is, well, Diane, if they can give you a much larger picture of this, you'd even get a little bit better results, but I did get fairly good results with this. And this, I'm going to show you two ways here. One way is the normal, so I'm bringing it into Pixel Trace, and I did that instead of going through and looking for the file. I just dragged and dropped the file in to make the cut, and it does that. First, I'm going to switch over to contrast. Okay, so I'm going to do a Pixel Trace, and sort of the obvious thing here is maybe, obviously we're not picking everything, so let me just zoom in here so you can see. I'm not picking up any of the fine lines with the default threshold, right? So I can up this. Well, first thing I'm going to do is, well, let me not do it right away. So let's just say, let's try to go up to 180 and see how we do with catching some of this. So we're still missing quite a lot, and you can see that we're already getting some not nice results because, we're picking up the spaces between that should be white that aren't. So if you had a larger image, this would make it a little bit easier. But in the meantime, I'm just going to resample it 5 times, just the max. And you'll just watch here. I'm going to apply changes. And you can see it already cleans it up quite a lot. Still missing the top of the S here. So I might want to go up a little bit further. And you sort of have to play around with it. I'm still missing the top of the S. Let's go up by 10s here. Okay, so that's a little bit better up there. If we look at some of the other places down here, those are all okay. But if we come down to, it looks like those might come out okay. It's kind of hard to tell. I can't zoom it in anymore, unfortunately, here. So let's just try that. So we're at 200. Everything looks like it's coming in. So let's go ahead and import that. Finish tracing. And let's just zoom in here, and we'll see. So you can see that we get a pretty good coverage here. I don't have the outline on here because I don't want to show, outlines that will, change the perception of what here. You can see right here, this S here, we're missing a little bit at the top. Let's zoom in here a little bit more. All these look fairly good. A little flat on some of the O's and stuff, but not too bad. So that was bringing that one in, doing a resample of 5x, and doing a threshold of whatever we said. I think it was 200, somewhere around there, 190, 200. I think we had to go up to 200. The other way you can do it, that sometimes you get a little bit better results, and we'll see if we can do this. So we'll bring it in over here, drag it in to go do the pixel trace again. And this is, again, I like this method because I've shown this a couple times. Anytime you have a solid white background, you can pick the background and then do a layer. And sometimes you can, because you can control the layer a little bit more fine. So while on the pixel trace your tolerance is from 1 to 255, on your color it's from 1 to 300 or 0 to 300. So you have a little bit finer control. Not much more, but finer. Anyway, so it's already on white, but if it wasn't, you could click on this and then click in the white area. When you do that, you'll see down here it shows you what you're selecting, white, all Fs. And again, we're going to 5x it. Let's zoom in here. And we'll start with the default, which is 5, which is going to be too low. But now you have to look in reverse. So basically you have to look to see where there's no green. Or basically where there's green, it's going to be white here because we're selecting the white. So you can see we're missing a little bit of the white in here. Let's go down to these other ones. We're missing the break in there. So we just up it. And, let's up it. Let's go to 15 to sort of see how that is. So we get a little bit better. It looks like we got a break in there. Not too bad. But what I wanted to show you is you can actually go up pretty high on this. Let's go to 30. See how well we do here. And the higher you go, the little bit better definition you might get. So far, it looks like, let me go up here with our fine lines. We're missing, we got too much here. See, we went and we lost some of that tail of the S, so we want to back down a little bit. Let's try 25. So there we have more of the tail. We might want to go down to 20, see how that works. Oops, I got to apply first. And then we got a little bit more of the tail. Where was the others? The G's okay. The S, we lost some of the top of the S. So, you may have to go back down to 10. See how that works. So we get better there. Oops. We're still good there. I might want to go up to 15 and see how that works. Anyway, so you fool around with it and just sort of look. Again, because you're sort of at a very fine detail, you sort of have to compromise. Now we're still missing part of the S, so we got to come down a little bit here. There we go. And let's go one more. I don't know if that S is complete or not, but we can try it. So let's say we like that. That's fairly good. So we've applied the changes. We're going to import it, finish tracing, and you can see that it's all white. So the first thing I'm going to do is do the layer, which is this icon here, or Control L, and I basically get the background, which I don't want, and then this. And now I'm going to go ahead, excuse me, I'm going to change the color here. I'm going to change it red so we can see the difference here. And so that's a way to bring it in when you're only working on the background. So let's just see how this looks. So we didn't, we missed some of the breaks there, and we did miss some of the S's here. So in this case, it might be better to do the blacks We could have upped the blacks a little bit here to get the top of the S, but at least with the blacks we got, these pretty well defined. Let's just say that you couldn't do any better than this, and you wanted to clean this up a little bit. You could do sort of some manual editing, and in this case, this is pretty straightforward. Again, I'm using the control key with the eraser, and you can get your. I'm off a little bit there, so let me start over again. Boy, let me zoom in so I can aim it up a little bit here. So you can clean up the spots here where there's no cutouts. But again, the ideal way to do this would be to either get, well, a more ideal way would be to get, so the picture they sent you was, what was it, 1500 by 2100 pixels. So if they doubled that, you would have a better, and you could resize it and make the cut to whatever size you needed it. That would help, but what would be even better is if they had the fonts, if you could access to the fonts, if they told you what fonts they were, and then you could basically retype it in and adjust it. But basically, if you started with a larger PNG file, and PNG is a good format if they're going to do it. The other thing to check is to see if whatever program they did it, let's say they did it in Word, they might try to print it to a PDF, like using QPDF or PDF Creator or something like that, because it might put it out in vector. If it puts it out in vector, then you can bring in the PDF and import the PDF instead of the PNG as a vector PDF, and you would get even cleaner lines. So that's the first part. The second part of now how would you print this out or cut it, print and cut it out. So let's get rid of this one. So this is what you want, and you said you had a actually let's see what kind of shapes we have here. Let's say you wanted it on a, you didn't tell me what shape it was, so I'm going to go with all categories here. I don't know, something like a scroll. I think there's a scroll on here somewhere. Oh, here we go, wavy. So scroll looking. Let me go to contrast, or not contrast. I'm going to flatten this just so it's size-wise we're good. And then you would, put it over. Let's make this black so we can see it. Whatever the shape was that you wanted to print and cut it, and I would do print and cut would probably be the answer you would want to do here. So select all and stack. So let's say that's sort of the shape that you want, and it's probably not because this doesn't look like a very nice bridal shower invitation, wavy on the side, but just bear with me here. The trick would be to print and cut is you'd want this shape, whatever your cutting shape is going to be, it's the largest object on there, so we're going to be okay as far as the registration marks. But you want it on the bottom, and you want it to be white. And I'm going to get rid of any empty layers by hitting the trash can here. And so what will happen is when you print it, you'll have both layers visible, and you'll get something like this, right? So I'm still on landscape here. Okay, so you get something like this. So you don't see that background scroll because it's white, so it's not going to print anything on your printer. And then when you send it to the cutter, actually, I forget if you said if you had a zing or not, but let's assume you had a zing. Then when you printed it, you would want your registration marks. Sorry, because you would probably want to do a print and cut. Make the cut. Okay. So when you printed it, it'd print out. You'd have your registration marks, and then when you cut it, send it to the cutter, you would just turn off this layer, and so the only thing it would cut would be, the outline. And then, you would use the registration marks, and it would print it out. Perfect. So let me go back to, because you're typing in here. What I want to do is center it on a die cut like a reverse print and cut. Oh, you have a, you don't want to do a print and cut. You want to print it and send it through a die cut machine like a Big Shot or whatever they're called. Oh no, I'm sorry. You did say bring it to your thing and cut around it. Okay, sorry. I was too far back on your comments here. Yes. Okay. So you understand what I did here, and that you think that'll work for you. I mean, other than the shape, obviously the shape is wrong. Yeah, Clifton's saying that he thinks that's the Broadway font, the one that. Oops. I'll turn the contrast here. The Broadway font that has the cut lines in it, and you should be able to get that on the internet. I'm not sure if this was another font or they hand drew that, or some of the, obviously this L is different than this L and everything. But yeah, thanks, Clifton. Okay, so we are going really long here, so let me just make sure I got got all the questions here on from the thread. So Loop, yeah, so she's the one that she did the first question basically and added it to the gallery. So this really wasn't a new question for me to demonstrate or someone to demonstrate. She was saying that she put some of these in the gallery. So okay, we're long. So before I go back, well, first of all, is there any questions on any of these subjects that we actually covered?
One similar, Lee wanted to know, copying an image from Google into Make the Cut, can you directly paste from Google into Make the Cut? I don't know if that's
yeah.
same topic.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do this real quick. So let me go to. I don't even know what to Google for. IRS. View it. So you have an image from Google, right-click on it, copy image. It puts it in your clipboard. Go to Make the Cut. Go to Pixel Trace, paste. Okay, that was a PNG, so that was a bad example. In this case, you can't. The PNGs and GIFs that have a transparent layer, when they come in from the clipboard, this is a Windows issue. When you come in from the clipboard, the transparent layer isn't really there. It comes in as a solid. So that's not good. So we want to pick a picture that wasn't a PNG. Okay, how about this one? This is, I don't want to visit page. I want to visit. That's a PNG too, which means it's probably going to do this. Not all PNGs have the transparent layer. That one did. Okay. We'll try one more here that won't be a PNG. Let me open this up a little bit so I can see more. Okay. Here, IRS. This guy is a JPEG. Okay. Looks like a mean old IRS guy. So copy the image, go to Pixel Trace, copy from the clipboard, and then you have it. And then you can do the same thing by, obviously not by alpha, not from the clipboard because that doesn't handle alphas very well, but you can do it by color or Pixel Trace, same things we did before. So yes, you can do it. If you were having troubles, Lee, with some images, chances are they were probably PNGs that had a transparency layer to them, in which case Windows Clipboard doesn't handle that very well. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop the recording because we are way long on it.